The city was alive with noise.
People walked in busy markets, children laughed in the streets, and men stood before tall idols carved from stone and wood. Every corner of the land was filled with the sound of prayers, not to Allah, but to lifeless statues made by their own hands. They believed these idols could bring them rain, wealth, and children. Their hearts were blind and their ears were closed to the truth. Among them lived one man different from all the rest. His name was Nuh. He did not bow before idols, nor did he ask for blessings from stones. His heart was pure and his faith belonged only to Allah. When he looked at his people, his chest felt heavy with sadness. He knew they were walking toward destruction, yet they laughed and danced as if the world would never change. One day, Nuh stood in the marketplace. The sun was hot and the crowd was loud, yet he raised his voice clear and steady. "O my people, worship Allah alone. He created the heavens and the earth. He gives you food and water. Do not bow to idols that cannot hear you or help you. If you turn to Allah, He will forgive you and give you mercy." The people stopped for a moment, surprised by his words. Then some burst into laughter. One man shouted, "Look, Nuh speaks against our gods again." Another mocked, "Do you think the idols we worship are blind? They protect us every day." Others walked away shaking their heads, whispering, "This man has lost his mind," but Nuh did not stop. His voice carried hope and warning at the same time. He spoke to them during the day under the blazing sun, and at night under the quiet stars. Sometimes he called them in public, standing tall before the crowd. Other times he went quietly to a man's door and whispered gently, "My brother, return to Allah before it is too late." Still, most of them turned away. They covered their ears with their fingers and wrapped their clothes tightly around themselves, saying, "Do not listen to him. He only wants to be above us." The chiefs of the people were the loudest in mocking. They feared that if the poor and weak followed Nuh, their own power would fall. So they told the crowd, "He is nothing but a man like you. If Allah wanted to send a messenger, He would have sent an angel." Nuh felt pain in his heart, but he never gave up. His love for his people was stronger than their hatred for him. At night he stood in prayer, raising his hands to the sky. "O Allah, guide my people, for they do not know." His tears fell quietly, unseen by the world, but seen by the Lord of the worlds. As days passed, Nuh continued his mission. Some poor and humble people listened to him. They felt his words touch their hearts and they began to believe. But the leaders laughed even more. "Look at the people who follow you," they shouted. "They are the lowest among us. Do you expect us, the chiefs, to sit with them? Never!" The rejection grew louder, yet Nuh remained firm. His eyes showed no fear, only compassion. He reminded them again and again, "I do not ask for money. I do not seek power. I only wish for your safety. If you continue this path, a great punishment will fall upon you." The people grew angry. Some spat on the ground as he passed. Others raised their hands to hit him, but he walked away calmly. Children in the streets repeated the words of their parents, mocking him with cruel laughter. Yet his face stayed patient like a mountain against the storm. Still, there were nights when silence filled his home. He sat alone, the weight of rejection heavy on his shoulders. But in those moments his heart whispered with faith, "Allah is with me." I will not stop. Years passed. Then decades. Then centuries. Imagine the scene. A man calling his people for hundreds of years, yet only a few listened. Every day he stood among the idols and the noise, his voice rising above the crowd, warning them again and again. His lonely voice became like a river, sometimes ignored, but never silent. The chiefs laughed and said, "If you are truthful, bring us the punishment you talk about." But Nuh warned them, "Do not rush what you do not understand. When Allah's command comes, there will be no escape." The crowd continued to laugh, but behind their laughter a strange fear began to grow. Why did this man never stop? Why did his eyes hold such certainty? Why did his voice carry a weight that could not be broken? The people could not see it yet, but something was coming. Something greater than all their idols. All their laughter and all their pride. And Nuh, the lonely voice in the crowd, was the only one prepared for what lay ahead. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and the months stretched into years. Yet Prophet Nuh continued his mission. What made his story unlike any other was not only his courage but his patience. For almost 1,000 years, 950 years, he called his people toward Allah without giving up. even when rejection was all he received. Every morning, he rose with hope. He walked among his people, his voice calm but firm. "O my people, worship Allah alone. He will forgive you and bless you. Do not bow to idols that cannot hear, cannot see, cannot help you." Some people turned away without even listening. Others laughed, shaking their heads as if he was a fool. The chiefs shouted in anger, "Do you expect us to leave the ways of our fathers because of your words? Who are you to challenge our gods?" Still, Nuh did not stop. He went to their homes quietly. He knocked on their doors at night when the world was silent. He sat beside them in the daytime under the hot sun and whispered with kindness, "Brother, do not destroy yourself. Turn back to Allah before the punishment comes." The people grew restless. They mocked him openly. When he walked by, children were taught to laugh at him. Men would spit near his feet. Some even covered their ears with their fingers and pulled their garments over their heads, saying, "Do not listen to him. He only wants to be greater than us." But inside Nuh's heart there was no anger. There was only sorrow. He knew the truth, and he knew the danger that awaited his people if they continued in their disbelief. Yet with every insult his patience only grew stronger. He prayed in the stillness of the night, his voice breaking with tears. "O Allah, guide my people. They do not know. Their hearts are blind, their ears are closed, but you can guide them if you will." Years passed and only a few followed him. Most of them were poor, humble, and simple people. They felt the truth in his words. But the chiefs grew more arrogant. "Look at those who follow you," they shouted in front of crowds. "They are nothing but the lowest among us. We cannot sit with them. If you want us to listen, remove them from your side." Nuh refused. He stood firm and answered, "I will never push away those who believe. Their value is with Allah, not with you. Do you not see that Allah may raise them above you on the day of judgment?" The leaders grew angrier. They spread lies, whispering in the ears of the people, "Do not follow him. He is only a man like you. If Allah truly wanted to guide us, he would have sent an angel." But Nuh never stopped. His persistence became like a river that never dries. Day after day, his voice echoed through the valleys and the markets. Sometimes he spoke with passion, his words heavy with warning. Other times he spoke with gentleness, filled with mercy and love. The people became divided. Some secretly believed but feared the chiefs. Others mocked louder to hide their own doubts. And the chiefs, full of pride, challenged him. "If you are truly a prophet, bring us the punishment you keep warning about." Nuh looked at them with sadness. He warned, "Do not rush what you do not understand. When Allah's command comes, there will be no escape." But they only laughed louder, pointing at him as if he was a man telling stories. Imagine the scene. A single man standing against generations of disbelief. For centuries, he walked the same streets, faced the same insults, and spoke the same truth. His hair grew gray, his body grew old, yet his mission never slowed. No man in history carried such patience. He could have walked away. He could have lived quietly with the few who believed. But his love for his people kept him strong. He wanted them saved, not destroyed. At night, when the world slept, his prayers filled the sky. His voice trembled with tears, but his words were unshaken. "O Allah, I have called them night and day. I have spoken to them openly and in secret, yet they run farther away. Increase your mercy, my Lord, before your punishment arrives." And so for 950 years, Prophet Nuh remained the same, a beacon of patience, a voice of truth, a man of unshakable faith. The people did not know it, but time was running out. Their laughter would not last forever. Their arrogance would soon meet a storm unlike any they had ever seen. The years of patience had passed, and the people still refused to listen. They laughed, they mocked, and they turned away. But one night, in the silence when the stars filled the sky, Allah revealed a command to his servant. A command so unusual, so mysterious, that it would change everything. Prophet Nuh was told by Allah, "Build the ark under my eyes and with my guidance. Do not worry about those who mock you. Their time will come." The words echoed in his heart. A ship, in a land surrounded by deserts and valleys. There was no ocean, no river wide enough for such a vessel. But the command was from Allah, and Nuh obeyed without hesitation. His faith was stronger than logic, stronger than doubt, stronger than the laughter of men. The next morning he began his work. He chose a piece of land far from water and started cutting wood. His old hands carried the heavy planks, his voice whispering prayers with every nail and every strike. The sound of hammering spread through the village. People came running, curious to see what this man was building. When they saw it, their laughter shook the air. "Look at him," they shouted. "He spent years warning us, and now he builds a ship on dry land." Another mocked, "Maybe he wants to drag it across the sand." The chiefs clapped their hands and laughed louder. "This is the proof he is nothing but a madman." But Nuh did not stop. His face was calm, his heart unshaken. With each strike of his hammer, he remembered the words of Allah. He knew what they did not. The flood was coming, days turned into weeks. The ship grew larger and larger. It was no small boat, it was an ark, massive and wide, strong enough to hold believers, animals, and food for a long journey. The people gathered daily, pointing and mocking. Even children laughed, throwing stones and shouting, "O Nuh, will your ship sail on the sand?" Still he worked. His believers worked beside him, carrying wood and shaping planks. They were few in number, but their faith was strong. Every nail they struck felt like a step closer to Allah's promise. The ark's shape began to rise tall against the horizon. It became impossible to ignore. Travelers from far villages came to see the strange sight, a massive ship sitting in the middle of dry land, and each time the chiefs used it as a chance to humiliate Nuh. "This is the man who said he is a prophet. Look at his wisdom." A boat in the desert. Nuh replied with words that cut deeper than their laughter. He said, "If you mock us today, soon we will mock you as you mock us now. You will know who will face punishment and who will find mercy." His calmness only made them angrier. The chiefs grew red with pride and arrogance. They told their people, "Do not fear his words. He has warned us for centuries and nothing has come. Look, he wastes his life on a ship that will never touch water." But the ark continued to grow. It had decks, strong walls, and space inside for pairs of animals. Step by step, plank by plank, it became clear this was no ordinary ship. It was built for something greater, something the world had never seen. At night, when the people slept, Nuh looked at the half-finished ark and whispered, "O Allah, I have obeyed your command. I have done my part. Soon they will see the truth." His eyes were tired, his body old, but his faith gave him strength. The believers also felt the weight of what was coming. They watched the sky, noticing the clouds that grew heavier with each passing season. They felt the wind change, cooler and sharper. Something was different. Something was near. The disbelievers, however, only grew louder in their mockery. They held gatherings near the ark just to laugh and sing. Look at Nuh's dream, a sea on dry land. They pointed at the believers and mocked them too, saying, "Your prophet wastes his life, and you waste yours with him." But behind their laughter, a strange unease began to spread. Why did Nuh never stop? Why did he work day and night without fear or doubt? Why did the ark grow bigger and stronger with every passing week? The people did not know it, but the ark was almost complete. Its doors were strong, its walls high, its roof sealed. It stood ready like a fortress waiting for a command. And in the hearts of those who mocked, a question whispered silently, "What if he is telling the truth?" The ark stood tall in the middle of the desert, a silent answer to their arrogance. And though they laughed, the laughter could not hide what was coming. The storm was closer than they thought. The ark now stood complete, massive, tall, and silent in the middle of the dry land. Its planks shone with fresh wood, its doors were strong, and its decks were wide enough to carry many lives. For years the people had laughed at it, but now the air itself began to change. The sky, once bright and clear, grew darker each day. Heavy clouds gathered on the horizon. The wind carried a sharp chill, unlike anything the people had felt before. The birds flew lower, restless as if sensing something unseen. The earth trembled lightly, warning of what was to come. Nuh stood beside the ark, his old hands resting on its wooden frame. His heart was calm, though his eyes were wet with tears. He had spent centuries warning his people. Now the command of Allah was near. Then came the sign. Water began to spring from the ground, gushing streams that poured from the earth itself. At the same time, drops of rain fell from the dark sky. One drop, then another, until the sound of rain was like endless drums beating against the soil. The people looked around in shock. Never before had they seen rain like this. The ground, usually dry and firm, was quickly soaked. Streams turned into rivers, rivers swelled into torrents. The flood had begun. Inside the ark, Nuh gathered the believers. They were few, humble in number but strong in faith. With them were pairs of animals, male and female of every kind, walking calmly into the ark by the will of Allah. The sight was astonishing. Lions beside lambs, birds beside beasts, all finding safety within the wooden walls. The disbelievers, however, still mocked. They shouted over the storm, "This is only heavy rain. It will stop soon, just as it always does." Some laughed at the sight of animals entering the ark. "Look at this madness," they cried. "A ship for beasts and the poor." But their laughter began to fade as the water rose higher. Streets turned into streams. Houses shook under the force of water rushing through them. The laughter turned into cries. Panic spread across the land. People ran to the hills, climbing rocks and trees, searching for safety. But the water only rose higher and higher. From the ark, Nuh looked out and saw his people drowning in disbelief. His heart broke, but he knew the decree of Allah was true. He had done his duty. He had warned them for centuries. Now the promise had arrived. In that moment his eyes fell on someone dear, his own son. The boy stood far away, climbing a hill, refusing to enter the ark. Nuh cried out with a voice full of pain, "O my son, come aboard with us and do not be with the disbelievers." But his son, filled with pride, shook his head. "I will climb a mountain," he shouted, "and it will save me from the water." Nuh called again, desperate, "There is no protection today except with Allah." Before another word could be spoken, a massive wave rose between them, higher than mountains, roaring with unstoppable force. In one breath it swallowed the boy and carried him away. Nuh lowered his head, tears mixing with the rain. Even his son could not escape the command of Allah. The flood grew wilder. The sky poured endlessly, and the earth gushed from below. Waves taller than trees crashed against the land. The people who once laughed now screamed for mercy, banging on the ark's walls, begging to be let in. But it was too late. The doors were sealed by Allah's command. Inside, the believers trembled at the sounds outside, the cries, the thunder, the crashing waves. Yet their hearts found peace in knowing they were safe under Allah's protection. The ark rose with the water, lifted gently at first, then carried higher as the flood swallowed valleys, villages, and mountains. The chiefs who mocked the most stood on rooftops shouting to their gods for help. But the idols were silent. Stones could not save them. Wealth could not buy them safety. Power could not lift them above the waves. Their pride was drowned with their bodies. The storm raged on. Days and nights passed in endless rain. The ark sailed across what was once land, now a limitless ocean. Nothing of the old world remained. Only the believers inside the ark and the endless water outside. For the first time, silence filled the hearts of the disbelievers, because their voices were gone. The laughter, the mockery, the arrogance, all drowned beneath the waves, and in the middle of the storm the ark sailed calmly, guided by Allah, carrying the seeds of a new beginning. The storm had raged for days and nights. The rain had poured without mercy, and the waves had swallowed everything. But then, as suddenly as it had begun, the sky started to clear. The clouds broke apart, and the heavy rain slowed to a gentle drizzle. The roaring of the waves softened, and silence began to settle across the endless waters. Inside the ark, the believers looked around in wonder. They had lived through fear and darkness, hearing the cries outside, hearing the crash of thunder and the roar of waves. Now there was only calm. The ark floated peacefully, guided not by sails or ropes, but by Allah's command. Nuh stood among them, his face marked with age and sorrow, but his eyes filled with gratitude. He had seen his own people reject him, even his own son refuse him, but he had also seen Allah's promise come true. The ark, built under Allah's guidance, had carried them through the greatest storm the earth had ever known. The days passed slowly. The believers looked out from the ark and saw nothing but water stretching to the horizon. Mountains were gone, valleys were gone, and the villages they once knew were hidden beneath the waves. The world they remembered had been erased. All that remained was this endless ocean and the floating ark. Then came the moment of mercy. Allah commanded the skies to stop pouring, and the earth to swallow its water. The rain ceased completely. The rivers calmed. Slowly, the level of the water began to sink. Peaks of mountains started to appear, rising like islands from the sea. Finally, the ark rested gently upon the slopes of Mount Judy. The believers felt the vessel come to a still stand, no longer moving with the waves. After all those days and nights of sailing, they had arrived at the place Allah had chosen for them. The doors of the ark opened, and fresh air filled the space. The believers stepped out carefully, their feet touching solid ground for the first time in weeks. Before them stretched a new world. The land was washed clean, fresh, and pure. The air carried a silence unlike any they had ever known, an earth reborn after judgment. They looked around in awe, breathing deeply, their eyes filled with both relief and sadness. They were alive, saved by Allah's mercy, but behind them lay the memory of those who refused, the villages they once lived in, the neighbors they once spoke to, the laughter of their own families, all gone beneath the water. Nuh, A.S., raised his hands to the sky. His voice trembled with emotion as he praised Allah. All praise is for you, O my Lord. You have saved us when none could save. You have kept your promise and you have given us a new beginning. The believers joined him in prayer, their tears falling onto the soil of the new land. They knew they were chosen to start life again, to build families, homes, and a community based on truth, not on idols. Yet, in the heart of Nuh, A.S., there remained sorrow. He remembered the moment he had called his son, begging him to enter the ark. He remembered his son's proud refusal, and the wave that took him away. The pain was heavy, but he accepted Allah's wisdom. Even family cannot save a person if they reject the truth. The story of the flood was more than just survival. It was a lesson written in water and storm. It was a reminder that disbelief leads to destruction, no matter how powerful, wealthy, or proud people may be, and faith, even if carried by only a few humble hearts, will always find Allah's protection. As the sun rose over the mountains, the world shone with light again. The believers walked forward, stepping into the new dawn. They carried the memory of the flood with them, not as a curse, but as a warning and a guidance for generations to come. And so, the story of Prophet Nuh, A.S., was not only the story of a flood. It was the story of patience, of faith, of sacrifice, and of a man who spent nearly 1,000 years calling his people. A man who was mocked, rejected, and insulted, yet never gave up. The new earth was silent, but within its silence was a promise. A promise that the message of truth would never die, no matter how many storms came, no matter how much the world rejected it. And Prophet Nuh, as, standing at the dawn of this new beginning, knew that his struggle was not wasted. The ark was more than a ship. It was a symbol of Allah's mercy, His power, and His justice. The new dawn had arrived, and with it, a new chapter for humanity.